and trying to interact in sign language for some reason. Somehow, Haru manages to understand the old-ass man as he realizes that all his classmates were summoned before him and were transported to a different world after choosing a special skill. The old man tells him to follow him as he needs to choose a skill as well. But out of 50 skills, 43 have been already chosen, so there are no cheat skills available anymore. He realizes that he will have to take a lame-ass skill and somehow survive in the new world. But his hopes and dreams shatter once again when he notices that a jellyfish has better skills than the ones remaining for him. He realizes that he can never even survive a single day with these abilities and starts shaking the old man like a maraca. He shouts at the old man to stock up with better skills or learn how to count better than, and not summon more people if he doesn't have enough skills. The old man ends up snapping and pushes him away, claiming that a person like him with the ick of a bowling ball wouldn't survive even with the best skills. So he simply gives him all the remaining skills and pushes him down to the new world. He can't believe his eyes when he turns around to see a huge forest surrounding him while he stands there all alone scared. He suddenly spots a pouch on the ground and picks it up to find out that it has unlimited carrying capacity, which is a pretty decent item, but even with that, everything inside of it is as basic as my girlfriend. He soon does a drip check and tries to check his stats, but suddenly 2 dices appear on the screen. He tosses them, and they turn to M on both. He has no idea what the hell it means, but the stats tell him to put
Nigga,
all
you're
that on a
back.
single skill. He wonders whether M means minus or something, so he decides to play it safe and gambles it all on the
Anyways,
luck stat. To his utter surprise, the M turns out to mean maximum, and now his luck stats are turned up to the maximum. He also finds out that since he is such a lonely incel, God has given him a pity ability with which he can tame wild beasts. He looks around to see whether any of his classmates are around, but there is no one in sight, so he decides to move forward and
actually,
make his own
what is this?
house by taking
Unbreaking? Okay.
inspiration from the 2 guys on YouTube that make houses from mud. He starts walking through the forest, when he starts getting weird that some huge monster will peekaboo him, so he takes out another skill item known as the contact lenses. To his surprise, the moment he puts it on, he gets the ability to see the stats of different things, which is a very important and helpful ability. He realizes that these abilities seem to be much more than what their name implies and happily moves forward as he checks his surroundings to find herbs that can improve his health, antivenom mushrooms and much more. Coupled with his endless bag, he can easily collect as much as he wants and sell them as medicine for a huge profit. After rehydrating himself like a true Sigma male, he starts walking through the forests once again, where he suddenly finds an opening to a cave. He prays to the god that there are no monsters inside, and then enters it to find anything of use. The cave soon turns very dark, so he takes out his lantern and magic tent, which he can easily set up here and live peacefully. By the time night fell, Haru made himself more comfortable than Bear Grylls as he collects twigs and with his temperature magic, ignites them on fire, which will also keep the beasts away. He checks his stats once again, only to find out that a bunch of his skills got leveled up. But he is too tired to check them out, so he ends up dozing off. The next morning, he wakes up with a jolt and checks the surrounding area to make sure he is still safe and realizes that his monster-repelling techniques must have worked perfectly. He starts feeling hungry, so he lights another fire and takes out his pan before searing some mushrooms and beef jerky like a true food YouTuber. The food turns out to be pretty good, and he wonders whether he can live a life here as a muscled farmer. But realizes that he has no protein powder, so he goes out of the cave once again where he finds a bunch of herbs which can help him gain some muscles. While collecting the herbs, he hears a commotion behind him and finds a bunch of stupid goblins picking up shit from the ground. He immediately gets scared like the massive bitch he is and hides behind some bushes, while the brainless goblins start singing Skibidi Toilet. That's where Haru draws the line and takes out his stick before he can get affected by that brain rot. He wonders whether his wood will be enough to deal with the 2 goblins, but just to be safe he puts on some protection, and then rushes towards them before hitting one of the goblins on his big fat head. This wakes something up in him as he starts whacking the poor beast like a pinata till he gets knocked out cold on the floor. The other goblin gets scared, but attacks Haru anyways. Fortunately for Haru, the goblin's attacks are pretty easy to read, so he easily dodges the strikes before whacking him on the head, and then firing a small magic blast that seals the deal. After that he washes his face as the sun starts setting and decides to head back home as he worked a lot today. After reaching back into his cave, he roasts some mushroom like a total hobo, and checks his stats only to find out that multiple abilities have been leveled up. This is a very good news, but at the same time he wonders what will the goblins do with him if they find him in an empty cave all alone. He quickly shakes the terrifying thoughts away and quickly warms up a little with some exercise before heading back to bed. The next morning, he wakes up once again only to find mushrooms for breakfast, which is getting annoying already. He wonders whether he can find some meat, but immediately remembers how the vegans of his class would eat him alive if he ever said that. He quickly gets up once again and boosts his stats with some magic before heading out for the day with his trusty wood in his hand. He soon finds an item on the ground which again turns out to be a shitty mushroom. He throws it down to the floor and starts searching for meat which grows on trees like a total imbecile. Soon he comes to his senses and decides that he should simply start working on his magic skills, and boosts his stats once again. After that he starts running through the forest and to his surprise, his speed has increased several times, as his body feels very light and fast. Moreover, even his attacks seem to be quicker and stronger, so he decides to test this out on a group of goblins nearby. He immediately jumps in the battle and bitch slaps the first goblin with his wood before smacking the second one on the head as well. This seems to enrage the goblins though, as the jacked one grabs a club. But Haru hides behind some bushes like a total bitch and sneaks away, while the goblins look for him. He decides that he has had enough for a day, and returns back to his cave, where he thinks about the things he did that day before he starts working on some DIY projects like creating an IKEA table after several tries. By the next morning though, he has gotten pretty good at it and manages to assemble a stool and a coffee table all on his own. He decides to tighten his security as well now that he knows how to build stuff, so he creates a wooden gate at the entrance of his cave to make sure no one can enter without his permission. That night, he goes out to hunt some small game as he can't live without meat any longer. Thankfully for him, the luck is on his side as he manages to spot a rabbit running away in the forest. But his beastly desire to eat meat completely overpowers him, and he manages to catch it like a feral cat. He starts smiling like a monster at the thought of the delicious meat, when suddenly he feels the presence of other people in the area and gets on alert mode. He looks around and, to his surprise and dismay, finds the group of delinquents walking towards him. This really scares him as he doesn't want to get involved with them, so he hides behind some bushes and starts walking away quietly. But his idiot senses start tingling again. He quickly uses his special sight abilities, which lets him see everything around him, and to his surprise, he spots the class thoughts walking towards him from one side, while the average Sam Sulek enjoyers and the creepy nerds walk from the other side. He decides that he wants nothing to do with them, when he suddenly spots the vegan girls led by the class president. He lets the bunny go and wonders whether he should meet with the class president since she has been nice to him and he has known her since first grade. But he stops himself with sheer will as he thinks about how amazing it feels to be his own boss, and he decides that he will conquer this world alone. While celebrating his incel status, he ends up getting carried away and makes some noise which immediately gains the attentions of the delinquents. Scared that he will get discovered and wedgied, he immediately jumps into the bushes, hiding away from the delinquent. The smug cunt, however, notices that something is wrong and immediately walks over to the bushes to check. But thankfully a bunny saves Haru, while the delinquents turn away bored and leave. He decides to follow them towards a riverbank where they all sit down and start talking about everyday things that guys usually talk about. Haru is disgusted by their fatherless behavior and realizes that the class rep is very sensible and won't ever fall for guys like these. Suddenly, he notices that the delinquents have grabbed one of the nerds named Tanaka and are using him as Google to get all the answers about their abilities. They soon head upstream to find the rest of the classmates. But Haru is not interested in that, so he returns back to his cave and starts cooking up some shrooms while checking his stats. He notices that his loner skill got leveled up because he decided to stay away from his classmates. But even after this, he is still level 3. This is probably because of his skill known as the Master of None, which is basically ADHD, as he can't focus on leveling up a single skill. But at the same time, he is pretty good at almost everything. The other skill named Blockhead, however, is a total mystery to him, as it just sounds like an insult. He decides to get rid of his anxieties by stress, eating like an average American girl, and heads back to sleep. Later that night, he is unable to sleep as someone is making a lot of noise outside, so he heads out, expecting to find the delinquents. But instead, he finds the nerds in an all-out battle against the goblins. They seem to be as skilled in martial arts as Joe Biden, which makes Haru chuckle as he wonders whether he should help these dipshits out. This all changes though when he checks their stats, only to find out that they have amazing cheat skills compared to his leftover skills, and are much higher level than him as well. He remembers that his class is filled with top students, whether it be athletes, smart nerds, or children of celebrities, which makes him the only average guy in the class. He decides to head back to sleep as the nerds can defend themselves, when suddenly he feels a presence which puts him on alert mode. He turns around and notices 2 goblins creeping up on the nerds from behind, ready to shove their clubs up their asses. But Haru feels bad for them and decides to lend a helping hand. He immediately jumps in and whacks away both the goblins with a single swing of his thick stick, which knocks the goblins off. The nerds turn around, surprised to see Haru here, but they thank him for his help while Haru leads them back towards his cave. The nerds are shocked to see such an amazing cave, which is completely spotless and filled with all kinds of useful items, and not even a single anime body pillow. They ask how the hell did he manage to do all that, and Haru replies that he knows earth magic and some other low magic skills which helped him set it all up. He then asks the nerds what happened to the other classmates, and this seems to silence everyone. The nerd with the glasses looks down before telling Haru that they are on the run right now. Haru is surprised by this and asks what he means. He explains that the day they got transferred into this world, all of them were in shock as they couldn't believe what the hell was happening, but the nerds quickly understood the assignment as they realized that they are in an alternate world and have cheat skills. The bitches were crying and the hoes were feeling bored, but the class rep was trying to calm everyone down. The delinquents noticed that the nerds were not as scared of this sudden change and threatened to beat them up if they didn't tell them everything they knew about this world. But before they could do anything, they get surrounded by a bunch of goblins. All the hoes started crying, and even the delinquents started acting like a bunch of bitches as they scrambled back into the corner. But this was the exact moment every single nerd in the world waits for, and the nerds took charge. They immediately take control of their abilities and used their knowledge about fantasy worlds to easily defeat the goblins. The average Sam Sulek fans decide to help, and together they manage to defeat all the goblins in the area. The class rep quickly took charge once again and led all of them into a clear area near the riverbed where they could actually see any danger approaching them. Soon after that, the nerds helped everyone understand the basic, and they all set up camps while the class rep distributed work between them. Everything would have gone well if the entire class worked as a single unit. But in reality, the hoes were the first who decided that they don't want to set up tents and work, so they left on their own. Realizing that leaving was an option, the delinquents decided to ditch them as well, while the class rep tried to stop all of them but failed miserably. And slowly the entire class got divided into their own groups, and they all went their own ways. This left the class rep along with the nerds and a handful of other students who tried to work together as a team, but because all the others were so incompetent, The nerds were forced to take most of the work, including the battle against the goblins, and making sure that their camp didn't get raided. They also wanted to raise their levels as quickly as possible, because they wanted to be safe from the two most dangerous skills, which can control everyone. Unfortunately, both of the skills were taken by the delinquents who can't be trusted, and the only way to escape that spell is to have high level of magic resistance. The delinquents quickly learned about this as well, and to counteract what the nerds were doing, these useless wastes of oxygen started leveling up as well to make sure that their skills reign supreme, so that they can take control of everyone else. The nerds told this plan to the class rep, who decided to train and get leveled up as well. Finally, after a couple of days, the delinquents managed to learn the mind control skills, and to their surprise, they conveniently found the class rep walking nearby. These worthless degenerates immediately try to use their spell on her, but the class rep had other plans and tased the shit out of them, forcing them to the ground. The nerds helped carry them back to the camp where their plans were revealed, and so the delinquents were kicked out of the group. Unfortunately, this was not the happy ending they were expecting, as these zero-ick losers decide to attack their own classmates, and started burning down the camps and chasing after the nerds to teach them a lesson. The entire camp was destroyed as no one dared go against the delinquents with the mind control abilities, and this really broke the nerds who worked so hard for the camp. Moreover, the class hoes started showing their honus, as they blamed the nerds for everything, as they shouldn't have picked a fight with the delinquents when they couldn't back it up. Slowly, the entire class turned against them, and only the class rep spoke up for them. But because the situation was too awkward, they decided to leave. Haru was amazed after hearing all this and hugged them tightly, claiming that they are actual heroes, and decided to treat them all to a party where they stuffed their faces with shrooms like Mike Tyson on a podcast. The next morning, Haru bid them farewell with a bag full of shrooms, while the nerds asked whether he would want to join their team, as he fits the closest with the nerds. They claim that they are heading down to the nearby town to become adventurers, but Haru tells them to fuck off, as he is a loner, and literally shoos them away like a dog. Haru decides to check up on the rest of his classmates, especially the class rep, but on the way he ends up running into a rabid wolf. The wolf monster fucking bites him in the arm, but Haru manages to bonk him on the head, knocking him out before moving ahead. By the time night falls, he finds the area where his classmates were camped earlier, but he finds only the remains of a camp there. He quickly uses his tracking skills and starts following the footsteps when he suddenly senses the hoes coming right at him, so he tries to hide and move away. Unfortunately, the hoes discover him and shout at him to stop, but he runs like a madman, knowing that he shouldn't stick his wood in crazy. But the hoes force him to stop and ask him whether he knows where the nerds are. He asks whether they want to make the nerds run errands for them. But the hoes tell him to shut up, as they have realized their mistake, and the fact that they were alive just because of the nerds till now. He tells them to let it go, as the nerds are long gone by now, and the hoes can only chase after them if they know how to satisfy all the monsters on the way. He tries to make sure that they don't chase after the nerds and die a pointless death. But to his surprise, the hoes start crying for no reason. They start screaming that they simply wanted to apologize, and the captain of the hoes begs Haru to teach them how to survive till they can find the nerds. The hoes promise to give him the Super Ultra Guac Guac 2000 after spitting on his thing if he agreed to teach them, so Haru agrees. The girls follow him like a bunch of puppies lost in the woods and attack anything that Haru kills. He notices that one of them is hurt, so he gives her some of his potion. But the dumb bitch doesn't understand that it's not champagne and simply throws it all over Haru. He is so tired of these dumbasses that he start wondering when can he get back to his cave and relax, when the class rep notices him totally blanking out. The class rep seems happy to find him and calls out his name, but Haru is too preoccupied with his plans to look at her. But she manages to gain his attention by shouting at him. Haru is shocked to see the class rep right beside him, and wonders whether he will finally get a chance to score before the delinquents attack them once again. The class rep, however, doesn't seem to like the way he has been walking around with girls this late at night and asks why the hell are these Instagram thoughts following him. Haru tries to run away from these questions, but the other girls following the class rep start giving him the death stare, while the class rep tells him to stay where he is, while she asks the thoughts what he has been doing. Haru doesn't even want to get a handy from these thoughts anyways, and simply wants to return back to his incel ways of living alone. But he is forced to sit, while the other girls discuss what's supposed to be done of their situation. Haru decides to practice some magic while he is at it and starts chanting some of his earth magic spells, which ends up going wrong as he gets stuck beneath the ground. The class rep gets worried about him, but since her pull-out game is strong, she easily frees him from the ground. She finally comes to the conclusion that Haru is actually harmless, and he just wanted to help the thoughts out in return for some sloppy tops which can be written off as business expense. She and her girl crew apologizes for shit-talking him, but Haru simply wants to leave and play with his wood in his house. But the moment he mentions a home, the girls get interested asking whether he was born here. Haru realizes that these girls have the collective ick of a toaster and tells them that he came to the world just like them, but had free time so he made a home for himself. These gold diggers immediately start having a group meeting again when the class rep asks how big is his house. Haru thinks for a moment and replies that he can easily fit in around 240 people, and if he removes some of his furniture and bathhouses, then maybe even more. The girls are shocked to hear about the bath, while the class rep screams at him for living in such luxury while the rest are living like Bear Grylls. Finally, the class rep gathers all her courage and asks him whether they can stay one night over at his place. This really short-circuits his brain as he starts imagining these girls in satin shirts, while the class rep shouts at him to stop having scandalous thoughts. They soon start walking through the woods, and somehow this motherfucker is equipped with Google Maps, as well as he simply follows the arrows at night, while the other bitches are having trouble seeing what's in front of them. After walking for what seems like an eternity, they finally reach his house where they all start breathing hard, while he welcomes them to his not-so-humble abode. They immediately start ogling at all the luxurious things that he has in his life, while Haru wonders whether he speed ran through the harem-making process. Things take an amazing turn when these girls finally spot the bathroom, and their clothes come off just as fast as I last in the bedroom. The girls immediately jump into the bath together, while Haru stands outside wondering whether the forest life has turned their femininity into savagery. Haru finally decides to call it a night and feels very happy to have his own space outside. But even that is interrupted by the class rep who enters his tent and starts yapping about how the other guys left them all alone in the forest,
Good.
and how
I
hard
would
it
too.
is for the strong and independent girls to survive without their Stanley cups and their iced pumpkin spice lattes. But Haru's home provided them some much-needed
Yeah, I don't
relief.
deserve shit.
Haru tells her that she did a great job keeping their spirits high and protecting them throughout this journey, and she shouldn't compare herself to these weebs who have been working all their lives in the hopes of getting transported into an alternate world. The class rep thanks him for his
No, you
kind
should. You
words
guys are
and returns
disappointing.
back to
Don't
the
even know how to
house
live
where they
outside.
get a good night's sleep while Haru gets some
I
weed and
could.
starts imagining the girls while practicing how to create a protein shake. The next morning, he wakes up hoping no one shines a black light in his tent when he spots a purple-haired girl in his tent. He wonders whether this is the part where he finds a stepsis from Alabama, but the girl turns out to be one of his classmates. She tells him to get ready for breakfast, as they have cooked some mushrooms and fish, which really shocks him as he ends up knocking her head with his. He runs outside and starts chowing down on the
I'd be
fish
like, you
when he
can
thinks of her
cook?
Hana, while the class rep asks why is he acting like he has never seen a fish before. Haru tells the bitch to shut her trap as he has been going to the river every single day and watching the fishes while eating his shitty mushrooms. The class rep asks why didn't he catch them, but Haru replies that the fishes are slicker than his wood last night, which makes it very hard to catch them. He asks how the hell did they catch these fishes. And the class rep replies that they have experience handling slippery things and also they have magic. One of the girls show him how she uses lightning magic to Pikachu the shit out of the fishes, which excites Haru, who asks her to show it to him one more time. The girl produces the lightning ball once again. But this time he walks up to her and covers the lightning in a plastic cube before throwing it in the water and killing all of the fishes. This really excites him, and he even learns lightning magic this way. The girls are a little confused, but he explains that with his packing magic, he can learn elemental magic. The class rep realizes that it literally sounds like a cheat skill, but Haru replies that the old fuck who calls himself he god gave him very shit abilities, and this is just a loophole he found. Later, while the girls were playing in the water, he asks the class rep about her plans further on. The rep replies that they plan on finding their way to the nearby city and then find work over there. Haru thinks for a moment and claims that right now they are not very strong and independent and will need to raise their levels. The thoughts get mad at this as they are wearing skimpy clothes, which obviously means that they are empowered. But Haru knows that they are nothing more than dumb harlots. The class rep asks whether he can help them raise their level, and
No.
Haru immediately agrees and begins their basic training. When he asks about their levels, though, he finds out that the lowest level amongst them is 16, which is crazy because he is still level 7. He wonders what he can teach them when they are already much stronger than him. When suddenly the bushes behind them rustle. Haru calls for their attention and reveals that a bunch of wolves have been hiding and waiting for their chance to bite their juicy peaches. And as a test, he asks them to fight. The girls seem overly confident like any empowered woman of this generation. But at the end of the day, they turn out to be totally useless and get their ass handed to them in a terrific fashion. After that disgraceful performance, they all enter Harrow's tent and start contemplating their future plans, as they don't have any skills, so all they can do is either
The
return
fucking mean
back
y'all
to the
don't have any
city
skills?
or
Y'all are
find a sugar
useless.
daddy. The class thoughts immediately decide that they will easily find a rich man, and the rest follow suit. Feeling empowered once again, while the pink haired girl from the morning apologizes for entering his tent without his permission,
I'd be like,
as she
bro,
just wanted to
once
make
y'all
sure
get
that
away
he
from
was
him, he's
harmless
not coming back.
himself and not like those delinquents. He tells them not to worry and sleeps in his tent, only to wake up to a delicious breakfast with fish once again. While he was eating, he overhears some of the girls returning back to the forest to try and defeat the wolves with their womanly charms, I guess. But thankfully, the class rep stops them and tells them that they have to practice. So, the practice begins as they start fighting against lower level goblins. But these pathetic bitches are so trash that even the garbage truck refused to take them. They all lose one by one. But after some more training, the day for rematch finally arrives. The wolves seem pretty confident about themselves and even start talking smack. He wonders whether this would encourage the girls to fight. But some of these idiots are sleeping, while others are finding excuses to get out of the fight. Thankfully, though, not all of them are useless, as the pink haired girl takes the initiative and soon some of the other girls follow. Even though their execution was spotty, they manage to defeat the poor wolves pretty easily and party afterwards, even inviting one of the wolves to their room tonight for a rave. Haru lays down thinking that his job with these dumb hoes is done, but the class rep soon arrives and asks when are they leaving for the nearby town. This catches him by surprise, as he never planned on going anywhere. But these bitches be crazy, and they force him to accompany them to the city. The next morning, he is forced to pack up all his stuff with the pink-haired girl, while the class rep gives everyone a pep talk. She soon turns her attention towards Haru and realizes that he literally wants to pack everything he can in the small bag. She tells him that they can't carry that much stuff by themselves, and finally, after some back and forth, Haru decides to leave most of his things behind and tells the pink-haired girl to stay here and watch over. The class rep is shocked at this and tells Pinky that they are not leaving her behind, and after one final check to make sure they
Yo.
have all the necessary items, they decide to head out for their adventure. Haru looks out into the open, wondering about what problems they will have to face during their
It's
journey,
not they,
and
it's
tells
them.
the class rep that they'll have to stick together no matter
Stick
what if
together
they
with no
want to escape this
servants.
forest alive. Unbeknownst to them, that night when the rain started coming down, one of their classmates who was left alone runs through the dark forest, stumbling over roots and rocks running away from a hidden
Like y'all,
attacker.
you and me, we
His
is
marathon
not.
ends soon, though, as he finally falls to the ground and turns around to face his cloaked attacker, begging him to let him live as he doesn't have the abilities he is looking for. But the cruel attacker doesn't seem to care and starts choking the poor boy without even asking for consent or deciding on a safe word. As expected, the boy soon gets game ended, while the attacker moves through the forest again, looking for his next victim. The next morning, they continue their journey through the forest as Haru realizes that he needs to stay with the girls at all times to make sure they are safe from the delinquents who are after them. They decide to try and leave the forest as soon as possible as they were not feeling safe inside. But while walking through an empty plot, they suddenly come face to face against a giant orc wielding a massive club. Haru tells the girls to hide behind the trees as he doesn't want them hurt and orders them to watch him closely so they can also learn a thing or two about survival in the wild. He gets ready to face off against the orc and starts comparing the difference between their wood. But he knows that size doesn't matter, so he uses the orc's slow movements to his advantage and disappears from the area, leaving the orc confused. He chuckles and stays hidden behind the trees, while he remembers that the orcs have very high physical resistance, so hitting it with a stick would be a dumb move. Instead, he needs to use some sort of magic attack against it, which can do much more damage. He quickly opens his stats and starts looking through any magical abilities that he could use. But he realizes that he only has some basic elemental magic, which he uses for cleaning, vacuuming, and dusting the floor. Before he could come to a decision, however, the orc manages to find him and smashes the tree into two pieces. The angry fatty starts swinging his club, reminding me of my toxic ex. But unlike me, Haru is good at dodging crazy bitches, so he keeps falling back while trying to figure a way out of this problem. Finally, he takes advantage of the orc's pea-sized brain and with some fancy moves, appears behind the fat idiot, smacking him in the dome with his stick, proving that stamina is better than size. The orc slowly falls to the ground unconscious, while the size queens watch from behind the trees, shocked to see the fatty on the floor. Haru himself is shocked as he never expected the orc to be defeated this easily, since the nerds told him it's resistant against physical damage. The girls seem annoyed since they can't learn anything from this, as he didn't even use magic. He apologizes and promises that the next fat idiot they meet will be killed only using magic. It doesn't really take them long to find their next opponent, as a stupid orc was minding his own business walking towards his skibidi toilet. When Haru decides to rizz up the girls with his unlimited aura and creates a small fireball in his hands, he expected the magic to not be very effective since this is the first time he is using it. But when he shouts Kobe and throws the ball at the orc, the ball explodes in its face, killing the beast with a single headshot. The girls again are shocked, as there is no way they could learn anything from that display of power. Regardless of that, they have a pretty successful day, so by the time night falls, they create a campfire and start doing their natural jobs by creating a kitchen and cooking food. Meanwhile, Haru stays busy creating traps around their campsite, and making sure their tents are protected by both monsters and any other enemy. Suddenly, he detects someone coming their way, so he immediately jumps into action and hides behind a tree. He realizes that the intruders are humans, which and expects the delinquents to come through. But the intruders turn out to be the jocks looking for some creatine in the wild. Haru is relieved to see them as compared to the delinquents. They are much nicer. They seem to be surprised to see Haru in the wild and claim that they were looking for the girls as they wanted to warn everyone about a new dangerous ability that they have just found out about. Haru is immediately interested while the roided up jock tells him about a secret ability known as hijack, which is even more deadly than the mind control abilities of the delinquents. They claim that they can't trust anyone now, so Haru decides to prank them and pretends to have the hijack skill. The jocks, however, simply laugh it off, claiming that even if he had the hijack ability, it won't matter as he would stay shut in inside his house. Haru takes offense at this and claims that he actually has an ability called servitude, but the jocks claim that it's 2024 now, and they don't vibe with the whole slavery thing even in the South. After that, they bid Haru farewell, telling him to be on the watch against the person with this hijacking ability as they walk off into the forest to look for some protein shake. The next morning the girls get ready to get some weapons training, but while they were busy doing makeup, Haru decides to go into the forest to let one out, but the class rep ends up following him. She stops him and asks where he was last night, and Haru honestly replies that he met up with the jocks who warned him about a hijack ability. The class rep immediately looks a little pale as she starts squirming before bowing her head down and apologizing for hiding something important. Haru is not a dumbass, though, as he already guessed that she probably has the hijack ability. The class rep is shocked to see Haru look so calm, as she asks where did he find out about it. Haru replies that he is not as dumb as those creatine-guzzling numbskulls and deduced that much from her behavior. The class rep still looks confused as hijack is a pretty scary ability, as it gives her the power to steal anyone's skill after killing them. Haru tells her not to worry too much about it, as the nerds know what they are doing as they already are trying to seal the mind control abilities of the delinquents. But even after knowing about her hijack abilities, they didn't bother changing anything, which simply means that they trust her. Haru feels the same as he tells her that he is pretty relieved to know that she has this cheat ability, as he knows she won't use it to hurt anyone. The class rep feels very relieved after hearing this, and she starts smiling at Haru, which really gets his juices flowing as he decides to run into the forest to bust one before starting the day. When he gets back to the camp, he starts selling nut shake cocoa optional for some reason and starts asking for money. One of the thoughts immediately agrees to sell her body instead, and Haru obviously agrees to the deal, but the class rep immediately shuts it off, as she is not going to let anyone get pimped out. The thought, however, feels pretty bummed, as she really wanted that nut shake, so Haru decides that they should better start walking to get their brains running again. They start making good progress when Haru suddenly spots the river up ahead and tells the class rep that he will be going ahead to scout a bit while she makes sure that the group is safe. The class rep wanted to stop him as he went into the forest this morning as well and came back with suspicious coconut shake. Haru, however, doesn't listen and uses his super speed to launch into the forest and then starts using his magic infusion skill to make his body lighter. This gives him the ability to be more nimble as he jumps onto trees before launching himself up in the sky to get a better view. He quickly realizes that they have covered a lot of ground, but this dumbass forgot that he has no landing gears, so he cartoonishly tries to float in the sky, but obviously fails and comes falling down to the ground, barely surviving with 1 HP. By the time he returns back to the camp, it's already nightfall, and the class rep gets pissed to see him all bruised up. He calmly tells her that he fell down from a tree, while she screams at him to stop hitting his head again and again, as he already has very low IQ. Usually, Haru doesn't have to deal with bitches and their opinions, so he tries to calm her down with some more suspicious looking nut shake cocoa optional. But the class rep refuses and walks away, while the class thought immediately runs up to him, asking for a buckcake. Because of his scouting, though, they found a much faster way through the forest the next morning, and after some bit crying, some water sports, they end up running into a bunch of orcs. The bitches turn out to be super adept at running away as they immediately crush poor Haru beneath their shoes to run away. Finally, after dealing with all the issues and traveling through the forests for several days, they manage to get out of the woods and get the first sight of the beautiful city in front of them. Haru suddenly notices that he seems to have unlocked a new skill known as airwalk. He decides to check it out, and to his surprise, with this ability, he manages to easily walk in the air as if he is climbing stairs. The class rep is shocked to see this, But Haru tells her to calm her tits as he checks out the area to make sure there is no danger around. He climbs high up in the sky and uses his supervision to check far and wide when he suddenly finds some NPCs armed and armored, fighting against a bunch of monsters. He returns back to the ground and tells the class rep about it, who immediately claim that they must help those guys. Haru isn't interested in having any competition for the girls, so he refuses, claiming that these guys could very well be bandits. But the class reps pleads with him to help as if they are not bandits. They might die a painful death. Haru realizes that these bigs be crazy, so he tells them to chill out while he goes alone and checks the issue out. The issue still remains that the NPCs are pretty far away. He decides to use his ingenuity as he starts combining different spells with magic infusion, as he makes his body very light, and then uses wind magic for some boost. Together with those spells, he starts using air step and jumps from one step to the other with an incredible speed. His gamble ends up working out as he realizes that now he can travel to faraway places very easily. Unfortunately though, the dumbass class rep ended up getting pulled in by his magic as she struggles to hold his cape. But due to the increased weight and not knowing how to apply brakes, Haru ends up crash landing just near the NPCs. Thanks to his entry, the monsters end up dying, while the class rep is knocked out cold, while the NPCs wonder who the hell these insane idiots are. The NPCs introduce themselves as Gat and Oft, claiming that they were here on a quest to kill these monsters, but they were clearly outmatched,